The rain was cold, but the knife against my throat was colder. I was pressed against the rough bark of an ancient oak tree, my feet dangling inches off the muddy ground. Thunder crashed above us, shaking the dark forest, but it was not loud enough to drown out the sound of my own heart hammering against my ribs. I could smell him before I saw him, Jax, the rogue who had hunted me for 3 days. His breath smelled like stale meat and old blood. He did not look at me with love. He did not look at me with kindness. He looked at me like a wolf looks at a rabbit before he snaps its neck. He leaned in close, his dirty blonde hair plastering to his forehead in the rain. He smiled, and it was a cruel, twisted thing. "You run fast for a little Omega," he whispered, his voice scratching against my ears. "But not fast enough. Did you really think you could escape? Did you think anyone was coming to save you?" I tried to kick him, but my legs were weak. I had not eaten in days. "Let me go," I choked out, my voice barely a squeak. "I have nothing, I am nobody." Jax laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. "Oh, I know you are nobody, Elara. That is why this is going to be so easy. No one will miss a stray dog." He pressed his body against mine, pinning me harder against the tree. He was playing with me. He wanted me to feel the fear. He wanted to taste it. He moved the knife from my throat to my cheek, dragging the flat of the cold blade across my skin. Then he did something that made my stomach turn. He grabbed my chin with his free hand and forced my face up. He leaned in and smashed his lips against mine. It was not a kiss, it was a violation. It was a mockery. He was stealing my last breath before he took my life. I squeezed my eyes shut, tears mixing with the rain on my face, waiting for the bite of the knife. I waited for the pain. I waited for the end. But the end did not come. Instead, a sound tore through the forest that made the thunder sound like a whisper. It was a growl, low, vibrating, and terrifyingly deep. It sounded like rocks grinding together deep inside a cave. It sounded like death. Jax froze, his lips left mine, and he pulled back, his eyes wide with sudden panic. The knife trembled in his hand. The forest had gone silent, the crickets stopped chirping. The wind stopped blowing, even the rain seemed to hesitate. "Did you enjoy that?" a voice asked. The voice came from the shadows. It was smooth, dark, and dangerous. It was a voice that commanded kings to bow. Jax spun around, dropping me to the muddy ground. I scrambled back, gasping for air, wiping my mouth with my sleeve, trying to scrub away the feel of the rogue. I looked into the darkness between the trees. 2 eyes appeared first. They were glowing, not yellow like a normal wolf and not red like a monster. They were gold, pure molten gold, burning in the dark. A man stepped out of the shadows. He was huge. He was taller than any wolf I had ever seen. His shoulders were broad, stretching the black fabric of his shirt. Rainwater dripped from his dark hair, running down a face that looked like it was carved from stone. He was handsome, but it was a scary kind of handsome. He had a scar running through his left eyebrow, and his jaw was clenched so tight a muscle ticked in his cheek. I stopped breathing. I knew who this was. Every wolf in the kingdom knew who this was. It was Alpha Kael, the Alpha of the Moon's Shadow Pack, the enemy Alpha. My pack, the Silver River Pack, had been at war with him for 10 years. We were told stories about him to make us behave. They said he had no heart. They said he killed without mercy. They said he was a monster wrapped in human skin. And he was standing 10 feet away from me. Kael did not look at me. His golden eyes were locked on Jax. He took a step forward and the ground seemed to shake. "I asked you a question, rogue," Kael said, his voice calm but heavy with a rage that filled the air. "Did you enjoy touching what does not belong to you?" Jax took a step back, holding the knife up. She is nothing, just a stray Omega. I found her first." Kael tilted his head. "You are on my land." "I didn't know," Jax stammered. "I was just passing through. I'll kill her and leave, I promise. You won't even have to clean up the mess." Kael's eyes narrowed. The gold in them flared brighter. "You think I am angry because you are trespassing." Kael took another step. He was moving slow, like a predator who knows the prey cannot run. "I saw you," Kael said softly. "I saw you put your hands on her. I saw you put your mouth on her." I watched from the mud, shivering. Why did he care? Kael was the enemy. He should be happy that a member of the Silver River Pack was about to die. He should be cheering Jax on. Jax swallowed hard. "She is Silver River trash. She is your enemy too, Alpha. I was doing you a favor." "You tried to kill her," Kael growled. "Yes, to save you the trouble." Kael stopped. He was so close to Jax now. "You misunderstand," the Alpha said. "You tried to kill her, and that is an insult to me." Before Jax could blink, Kael moved. He was a blur of motion. One second he was standing there, the next his hand was wrapped around Jax's throat. He lifted the rogue off the ground as if he weighed nothing. Jax dropped the knife. He clawed at Kael's hand, kicking his legs, choking. Kael did not struggle. He just held him there, staring into his bulging eyes. "Only I decide who lives and who dies in this forest," Kael whispered. Then with a sickening crunch, Kael tightened his grip. Jax went limp. His head fell to the side at an unnatural angle. Kael dropped the body. It hit the mud with a wet thud. The rogue was dead. Silence returned to the forest. The only sound was the rain and my own ragged breathing. I was frozen. I should run. I should get up and run as fast as I could. The rogue was dead, but something much worse was standing in front of me. The enemy Alpha had just killed for me, or maybe not for me, maybe just because he was angry. Slowly, terrifyingly, Kael turned his head. His golden eyes landed on me. I pressed my back against the tree, pulling my knees to my chest. I tried to make myself small. I tried to disappear. "Please," I whispered, my voice trembling. "Please, just let me go. I won't come back, I promise." Kael did not speak. He stared at me. His gaze was intense, heavy. It felt like he was touching me without moving. He looked at my wet clothes. He looked at the mud on my face. He looked at the red mark on my throat where the knife had been. His nostrils flared. He took a deep breath, inhaling the scent of the rain, the blood, and me. His eyes went wide. The gold swirled, darkening into a deep amber. His body went rigid like he had been struck by lightning. A low sound rumbled in his chest, different from the growl before. It was possessive, it was painful. "No," he whispered. It was a word of denial. He looked angry, he looked horrified. He took a step toward me. I flinched, covering my head with my arms. "Don't kill me," I cried out. "Look at me," he commanded. His voice was not a shout, but it forced my head up. It was an Alpha command. I couldn't resist it. I lowered my arms and looked into his eyes. "What is your name?" he demanded. "Elara," I whispered. "Elara," he tested the name on his tongue. He looked at me with a mixture of hunger and hatred. "Do you know who I am?" "Alpha Kael," I said. "Yes, your enemy." He took another step. He towered over me now. The heat coming off his body was overwhelming. It chased away the cold of the rain. "Do you know why I killed him, Elara?" I shook my head, tears spilling over. "Because he was on your land." Kael laughed. It was a dark, humorless sound. He crouched down so his face was level with mine. He was so close I could see the specks of brown in his gold eyes. I could smell him, rain, pine, and something spicy like burning wood. It was the most amazing smell I had ever encountered. My wolf inside me, who had been hiding in fear, suddenly woke up. She scratched at my chest. She whimpered. She wanted to be close to him. "I killed him," Kael said, his voice dropping to a rough whisper, "because he touched what is mine." My heart stopped. "Mine?" I don't understand," I stammered. Kael reached out. His hand was large, his fingers rough. I flinched, expecting a blow, but he didn't hit me. He brushed his knuckles against my cheek, wiping away a streak of mud. His touch was electric. Sparks shot through my skin, making my toes curl. He felt it too. I saw his eyes dilate. He pulled his hand back as if I had burned him. He stood up abruptly, turning his back to me. He ran a hand through his wet hair, packing back and forth in the mud. He looked like an animal caught in a trap. "Of all the wolves in the world," he muttered to himself, looking up at the dark sky. "Of all the packs, why did the moon goddess do this to me? Why a Silver River rat?" He turned back to me. His face hard again. The softness was gone. The wall was back up. "Get up," he ordered. I struggled to my feet, using the tree for support. My legs were shaking so bad I almost fell again. "Walk," he said, pointing into the dark forest, deeper into his territory. "Where?" I asked. "Where are you taking me?" "Home," he said. "Your home?" I asked, panic rising in my chest. "But I can't. I'm Silver River. Your pack will kill me. Please, just let me go. I won't tell anyone." Kael stepped close again. He grabbed my arm. His grip was iron, inescapable. He pulled me against his chest. I could feel the heat radiating off him. I could feel the hard muscle beneath his shirt. "You aren't Silver River anymore," he growled. "You aren't a rogue, you aren't nothing." He leaned down, his lips brushing against my ear. I shivered, terrified and mesmerized at the same time. "You are my mate," he whispered. The word hung in the air, heavy and absolute. My knees buckled. Mate. The enemy Alpha was my mate. Fate had played a cruel joke on us. I was destined to be with the monster who had slaughtered my people's warriors. But do not think this saves you, Kael added, his voice turning cold as ice. He tightened his grip on my arm until it hurt. I do not want a mate, I do not want you, but the bond is law, you belong to me now. He began to drag me through the forest. Wait, I cried, stumbling after him. What are you going to do with me? Kael didn't look back. He kept walking, pulling me into the darkness of his kingdom, away from everything I had ever known. I am going to keep you, he said. I am going to lock you in my tower, I am going to watch you, and if I find out you are a spy, Elara, if I find out you are working for your alpha. He stopped and looked over his shoulder. His gold eyes flashed with a promise of violence. Then I will finish what that rogue started. I will rip your throat out myself, mate or not. Thunder cracked overhead, sealing his promise. I was not being saved, I was being taken. The rogue wanted to kill my body, but the alpha was going to destroy my soul. I stumbled into the dark woods, the hand of my enemy wrapped around my wrist, leading me into the belly of the beast. The journey to the Moon's Shadow Pack lands felt like a death march. My legs were heavy, dragging through the thick mud, and the rain continued to pour, soaking me to the bone. Kael did not slow down. He marched forward like a machine, his hand still wrapped tightly around my wrist. It wasn't painful anymore, but it was firm. It was a chain. I stumbled over a tree root, gasping as my knees hit the wet earth. Please, I whispered, my chest heaving. I can't keep up. Kael stopped. He didn't turn around immediately. He stood there, his broad back blocking the wind, his shoulders rising and falling with a deep breath. For a second I thought he would drag me through the mud. I thought he would kick me and tell me to get up. That is what the stories said about him. They said he had ice in his veins. Slowly he turned. The gold in his eyes was dim now, hidden behind a mask of annoyance. He looked at my scraped knees. He looked at my trembling hands. You are weak, he said. It wasn't an insult, it was just a fact. Silver River wolves are soft, you break too easily. I haven't eaten in 3 days, I snapped back, a sudden spark of anger cutting through my fear. And I just survived a murder attempt. I am not soft, I am tired. Kael's eyebrows shot up. He looked surprised that the little rabbit had teeth. He stared at me for a long moment, the rain dripping from his nose. Then, without a word, he bent down. Before I could scream, he scooped me up into his arms. I stiffened, my hands instinctively pushing against his chest. He was hot, burning hot. Being this close to him was overwhelming. His scent, pine, smoke, and rain filled my nose, making my head spin. My wolf purred inside me, curling up in satisfaction. She loved him. She didn't care that he was our enemy. She didn't care that he wanted us dead. She only knew he was mate. Stop squirming, Kael grumbled, adjusting his grip. He held me effortlessly, as if I weighed no more than a feather. I am not carrying you for your comfort, Elara. I am carrying you because you are slow, and I want to get home. He started walking again, faster this time. I rested my head against his shoulder, too exhausted to fight. I could hear his heartbeat. It was slow, steady, powerful, thump, thump, thump. It was the most soothing sound I had ever heard. Despite the terror of where we were going, my eyes grew heavy. Don't sleep, Kael warned, his voice vibrating through his chest against my cheek. We are here. I lifted my head and gasped. Through the trees, the Moon's Shadow territory appeared. It was terrifyingly beautiful. Unlike my pack, which lived in wooden cabins scattered near the river, Kael's pack lived in a fortress. Massive stone walls rose out of the mountain, surrounding a collection of dark, slate-roofed buildings. Torches burned with blue fire along the walls, hissing in the rain. It looked like a castle built for war. Guards patrolled the gates. Huge wolves, dark grey and black, paced back and forth. When they saw Kael emerging from the forest, they stopped and bowed their heads low. Then they lifted their noses and sniffed. Their hackles raised. Low growls started to ripple through the air. They smelled me. Alpha, one of the guards, shifted into human form. He was a scarred man with one eye. He looked at me with pure disgust. You bring a stranger. She smells like rot. She smells like Silver River. Kael did not stop. He walked past the guard, his face like stone. Open the gates, sealers. But Alpha, Sealers, stepped in front of him, blocking the path. She is the enemy. By the laws of the war, she should be killed on sight. Why is she in your arms? The air around Kael changed. It grew heavy, suffocating. The power of his Alpha aura slammed into the ground, making the puddles ripple. Do you question me, Sealers? Kael asked softly. Sealers paled. He stepped back quickly, bowing his head. Never, Alpha, forgive me. The heavy iron gates groaned open. Kael carried me inside. If I thought the outside was scary, the inside was worse. We entered a massive courtyard. Dozens of pack members were there, seeking shelter under the overhangs or working near the stables. Men, women, children. As Kael walked through the center, silence spread like a wave. Everyone stopped what they were doing. Every pair of eyes turned to us. I buried my face in Kael's neck, trying to hide. I could feel their hatred. It was a physical weight. They whispered to each other. Is that a Silver River wolf? Why is he holding her? Kill her, kill the spy. A rock flew from the crowd. It hit Kael's shoulder with a thud. Kael stopped instantly. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, the rock falling to the muddy cobblestones. The courtyard went deathly silent. Who threw that? Kael's voice boomed. It wasn't loud, but it echoed off the stone walls. No one moved. I will not ask again, Kael growled. A young male, barely 18, stepped forward. He looked terrified but defiant. She killed my brother, the boy shouted, pointing a shaking finger at me. Her pack killed my brother in the skirmish last winter. Why do you bring filth into our home, Alpha? I felt Kael's muscles tighten. I waited for him to drop me. I waited for him to hand me over to the mob. It would be the smart thing to do. He hated me too. But his grip on me tightened. He pulled me closer to his chest, shielding me. This girl is my prisoner, Kael announced, his voice cold and clear so everyone could hear. She is valuable, she has information, and she belongs to me. If anyone touches her, if anyone even looks at her wrong, they answer to me. He glared at the boy. Do you understand, Jace? The boy lowered his eyes, defeated. Yes, Alpha. Kael turned and marched toward the main keep, a massive building at the end of the courtyard. He pushed through the heavy double doors and into the great hall. It was warm inside. A massive fireplace roared on one wall, casting long, dancing shadows. The floor was polished stone and long tables lined the room, but Kael didn't stop. He headed for the stairs. Put me down, I whispered. I can walk now. Be quiet, he snapped. We reached the top floor. He kicked open a door and walked into a large bedroom. It smelled entirely of him. A giant bed with dark furs sat in the center. A balcony overlooked the forest. It was a king's room. He walked over to the bathroom and finally, unceremoniously, dropped me. My feet hit the cold tile and I stumbled, grabbing the sink to stay upright. Strip, he said. I froze. I looked at him in the mirror. He was standing in the doorway, his arms crossed over his wet shirt. His face was unreadable. What? I breathed. You smell like the rogue, Kael said. His nose scrunching up in disgust. And you smell like mud. I will not have that stench in my room. Take off your clothes and get in the shower. I wrapped my arms around myself. I can't, not in front of you. Kael rolled his eyes. He stepped into the bathroom. I backed away until I hit the tiled wall. He reached out and turned the knob on the shower. Steam began to rise immediately. Elara, he said, his voice dropping an octave. He placed a hand on the wall next to my head, leaning in. He was so close. The water hissed behind him. Do you think I want to look at you? Do you think I desire a skinny, weak enemy wolf? His eyes betrayed him. They traveled down my body, lingering on the pulse in my neck. His pupils dilated. He did want me. The mate bond was screaming at him to claim me, to mark me, to make me his, and he hated himself for it. I am leaving, he said abruptly, pulling back as if the air around me was poisonous. Wash, there are clothes in the cabinet. If you try to jump off the balcony, the fall will kill you. If you try to run out the door, my guards will kill you. Do you understand? Yes, I whispered. He turned and slammed the door. I heard the lock click. I sank to the floor, the steam wrapping around me. I was a prisoner in the enemy's bedroom. My mate was the monster of my nightmares. And the worst part, when he was close to me, I didn't feel scared. I felt safe. I felt whole. I cried as I washed the mud and blood from my skin. I scrubbed until I was red. I wanted to scrub away the feel of the rogue's lips. I wanted to scrub away the confusion. When I stepped out, I found a large black t-shirt in the cabinet. It was Kael's. I put it on. It hung to my knees, swallowing my small frame. It smelled like him, spicy and dark. I inhaled the scent deeply before I could stop myself. I walked out into the bedroom. Kael was there. He had changed too. He wore dry black pants and a fresh shirt, the sleeves rolled up to show his muscular forearms. He was standing by the fireplace, staring into the flames. There was a tray of food on the small table, bread, cheese, and roasted meat. My stomach growled loudly. Kael turned. He looked at me, wearing his clothes, his hair wet and messy. His breath hitched. For a second, just a second, the anger was gone. He looked at me with pure longing. He took a step toward me, his hand reaching out. "Elara," he whispered. I stood still, my heart pounding. Was he going to accept it? Was he going to accept me? Bam! The bedroom door flew open with a crash, splintering the wood near the lock. Kael spun around, a snarl ripping from his throat. He placed himself in front of me instantly, his claws extending. A woman stormed into the room. She was tall, gorgeous, and terrifying. She had long red hair and eyes like green glass. She was followed by an older man with grey hair and a face full of scars, the pack elder. The woman pointed a sharp, manicured finger at Kael. "Is it true?" she shrieked. "Is it true you brought a Silver River stray into the Alpha floor, into your bed?" Kael straightened up. "Freya, get out." "No," Freya yelled. She looked past Kael, her eyes landing on me. Her face twisted into a mask of pure hatred. "Look at her, wearing your clothes. She is a spy, Kael. She is an assassin sent to kill you in your sleep." "She is a prisoner," Kael said calmly, though his hands were fists. "Then put her in the dungeon," the elder shouted, stepping forward. "Why is she here unless—" The elder sniffed the air. He frowned. He sniffed again. His eyes went wide. He looked at Kael, then he looked at me. He smelled the bond. He smelled the truth. "Oh, moon goddess," the elder whispered, horror filling his voice. "She isn't just a prisoner, is she, Alpha?" Kael went rigid. Freya looked between them, confused, then realizing, What is it?" The elder pointed a shaking finger at me. "She is his mate. The enemy is the Alpha's mate." Freya screamed. It was a sound of pure rage. "No, that is impossible. The moon goddess would not bless a traitor." She pulled a silver dagger from her belt. "I will not let this happen. I will not let her destroy this pack." Freya lunged. She was fast, faster than I expected. She flew across the room, the knife aiming straight for my heart. "Kael," I screamed. Kael moved to intercept her, but the elder was faster. He slammed his shoulder into Kael, knocking the Alpha off balance just enough. Kael roared, stumbling back. I had nowhere to go. I backed up, hitting the balcony doors. Freya was on me in a second. She grabbed my hair, yanking my head back. The cold metal of the blade pressed against the soft skin of my neck, right where the rogue had held his knife hours ago. One move, Kael, and I slit her throat. Freya hissed, her breath hot on my face. Kael froze. He stood 6 feet away, his chest heaving, his eyes glowing so bright they looked like 2 suns. His claws were out, dripping with anticipation. But he couldn't move. If he moved, I died. "Let her go, Freya," Kael said, his voice a low, deadly vibration that shook the windows. "If you spill 1 drop of her blood, I will tear you apart." "She has to die," the elder shouted from the side. "It is the only way to save the pack. Kill her, Freya. Break the bond before it weakens him." Freya smiled. She pressed the knife harder. I felt a sting. A single drop of warm blood trickled down my neck. "Do it, Alpha," Freya taunted, staring into Kael's eyes. "Renounce her. Let me kill her. Or are you going to betray your entire pack for this?" I looked at Kael. He was vibrating with rage, but he was trapped. He looked at the drop of blood on my neck and his face contorted in agony. He had to choose, his pack or me. Kael's roar was not human. It was a sound that belonged to the beginning of the world, a sound of raw, unadulterated fury. The stone walls of the bedroom seemed to tremble under the weight of his power. "I said," Kael growled, his voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper, "let her go." Freya's hand trembled, but the hatred in her eyes was stronger than her fear. "She is a disease, Kael. If you keep her, the pack will turn on you. Is she worth your crown? Is she worth your life?" I could feel the silver blade biting deeper into my skin. The sting was sharp, like ice and fire combined. I looked at Kael, my eyes pleading. I didn't want to die here, not like this, in the room of a man who claimed to hate me but looked at me like I was his entire world. "Choose, Alpha," the elder commanded, his voice cold. "The girl or your people." Kael's gaze snapped to the elder, then back to me. The gold in his eyes flickered, fighting the darkness of his rage. For a heartbeat there was a terrible silence. Then Kael did something no one expected. He retracted his claws. He stood up straight and let his arms fall to his sides. He looked completely defenseless. "You want a choice?" Kael asked. He took a slow step forward. Freya tightened her grip, the knife drawing more blood. Kael didn't stop. He walked until the tip of the silver dagger was inches from his own chest. "If you want to kill my mate, you have to go through me. But know this, if you strike her, you strike your Alpha. That is treason." and the penalty for treason is death for your entire bloodline." Freya's face went pale. Her eyes darted to the elder, seeking support, but the old man had gone silent. Kael's dominance was an invisible weight crushing the oxygen out of the room. She is Silver River," Freya whispered, her confidence crumbling. "She is mine," Kael corrected. He reached out, his hand moving with the speed of a snake. He grabbed Freya's wrist and squeezed. I heard the bones snap. Freya screamed, dropping the silver dagger. It clattered to the floor, the metal ringing like a bell. Kael shoved her away with such force she flew across the room, crashing into the heavy wooden dresser. In a flash, Kael was in front of me. He didn't look at the others. He grabbed my face with both hands, his thumbs frantically wiping away the blood on my neck. His touch was no longer cold, it was desperate. "Elara," he breathed, his forehead leaning against mine. "Are you all right? Tell me." I'm okay," I whispered, my heart racing. He didn't let go. He held me as if I would vanish if he stopped. But the moment of peace was short-lived. Behind us, the elder let out a disgusted snort. "You have chosen a side, Kael," the elder said, his voice full of venom. "But do not think the pack will follow a leader who sleeps with the enemy. Tomorrow the council will meet. If she is still in this keep by sunrise, you will face a challenge for the alpha seat." Kael didn't turn around. He kept his eyes locked on mine. "Let them come. I haven't tasted blood in a week. I'm starting to get hungry." The elder grabbed the whimpering Freya and dragged her out of the room. The door remained broken, swinging on its hinges. A reminder of the violence that had just occurred. Kael finally pulled away, but his eyes stayed on the wound on my neck. The sight of my blood seemed to cause him physical pain. He walked over to the wash basin, grabbed a clean cloth and soaked it in warm water. He came back and sat me down on the edge of the massive bed. He began to dab at my neck, his movements incredibly gentle for a man who had just broken someone's arm. "Why?" I asked, my voice small. "Why did you defend me? You said you didn't want me." Kael stopped. He looked at the cloth, then at me. The firelight danced in his golden eyes, making him look less like a monster and more like a man who was deeply, deeply tired. "The bond does not care what I want, Elara," he said softly. "When she held that knife to you, I felt it, not just the fear but the pain. Every scratch on your skin feels like a hole in my own heart. I cannot let you die, even if it costs me everything." I reached out, my fingers hesitating before touching the scar on his eyebrow. He didn't flinch. He leaned into my touch, closing his eyes for a brief second. "My pack will not accept this," I said. "And yours will hate you. We are born to be enemies, Kael. Our blood is meant to be spilled by each other, not joined." "Then let the world burn," Kael growled, his voice low and possessive. He leaned in, his face inches from mine. "I spent my whole life being the alpha they wanted. Cold, ruthless, alone. But then I saw you in that forest, I saw you fighting that rogue. And for the first time in 20 years, my wolf didn't want to kill, he wanted to protect." He moved his hand to the back of my neck, his fingers tangling in my damp hair. The tension in the room shifted. It was no longer about war or packs. It was about the pull, the magnetic, soul-shattering pull of the mate bond. "You are a Silver River wolf," he whispered against my lips. "I should hate you." "I know," I breathed. "I should throw you in the dungeon." "I know. But if I let you go," Kael's voice broke, "I think I would stop breathing." He didn't wait for me to answer. He pressed his lips to mine. It wasn't like the rogue. It wasn't a violation. It was an explosion. It felt like coming home after 1,000 years in the cold. It was hunger and thirst and a desperate, beautiful fire. I wrapped my arms around his neck, pulling him closer, my inner wolf howling with joy. For that moment, the war didn't exist. The broken door didn't exist. There was only him. But as he pulled me down onto the bed, a distant sound echoed through the open balcony. A howl, then another and another. It wasn't the moon's shadow howl, it was higher, sharper. Kael pulled back, his eyes snapping to the window. His face went pale. He recognized that sound. I recognized it too. It was the war cry of the Silver River pack, my pack. "They're here," I whispered, terror cold in my veins. "They've come for me." Kael stood up, his face hardening into the mask of the enemy alpha once again. He grabbed his leather jacket and his heavy blade. "No," Kael said, looking at the flickering torches of an army approaching the gates. "They didn't come to save you, Elara. Look at the arrows." I ran to the balcony and looked down. Hundreds of Silver River warriors were emerging from the tree line, but they weren't calling my name. They were carrying fire, They were shooting flaming arrows into the moon's shadow village, burning the homes of women and children. And at the front of the line was my brother Julian. He wasn't looking for a sister. He was smiling as he watched the houses burn. "They aren't here for a rescue," Kael growled, his wolf beginning to surface, his teeth lengthening. "They used you as bait. They waited for me to bring you here so they could find the secret path through the mountains. Your alpha sacrificed you to start a war." I felt my heart shatter. My own pack, my own family, had sent me to die just to get an advantage. "Kael, I didn't know," I cried, grabbing his arm. "I swear I didn't know." Kael looked at me. For a second I saw doubt in his eyes. The bond was screaming that I was innocent, but the king in him saw a spy whose presence had brought fire to his gates. "Stay here," Kael ordered, his voice echoing with alpha authority. "If you step outside this room, my guards will kill you. If you survive the night, we will find out whose side you are really on." He leaped over the balcony, shifting into a massive black wolf midair, landing with a heavy thud in the courtyard below. I stood on the balcony, trapped between the fire of my past and the darkness of my future. My mate was fighting my brother, and no matter who won, I was going to lose everything. The smell of smoke was thick, cloying, and sweet with the scent of burning cedar. From the balcony, the world below had turned into a nightmare of orange and black. I watched as Kael, in his massive black wolf form, tore through the front lines of the Silver River warriors. He was a shadow of death, moving with a speed that shouldn't be possible for a creature his size. Every time his jaws snapped, a cry of pain followed. He was defending his people, but he was killing my kin. "Julian, stop!" I screamed into the wind, but my voice was swallowed by the roar of the fire and the clashing of steel. I saw my brother Julian standing atop a hill just outside the main gate. He wasn't shifting. He was holding a bow, his eyes cold and calculating. He launched a flaming arrow, and I watched in horror as it pierced the roof of the pack's nursery. I couldn't stay in the room. Kael's command echoed in my head, "Stay here," but the screams of the children below were louder. I wasn't a warrior and I wasn't a spy, but I wasn't a coward either. I tore a strip of fabric from the bottom of Kael's shirt, tied my hair back, and ran for the broken door. The hallway was chaos. Guards were sprinting toward the stairs, and female wolves were ushering the elderly toward the lower tunnels. No one noticed the small Silver River rat running the opposite way. I didn't go for the gates. I went for the nursery. The building was already starting to crumble. I burst through the front doors, the heat hitting me like a physical blow. "Is anyone here?" I coughed, covering my mouth. A tiny whimper came from under a heavy oak table. 3 pups, no older than 4 years old, were huddled together, their eyes wide with terror. Their teacher lay unconscious nearby, struck by a falling beam. "Come here," I said, my voice shaking but soft. "I'm going to get you out." They didn't move. They smelled my Silver River scent. To them, I was the monster who had brought the fire. "I'm with Kael," I lied, hoping his name would give them hope. "The Alpha sent me. We have to go now." That worked. They scrambled toward me, grabbing onto my legs. I picked up the smallest one and ushered the other 2 toward the back exit. We crawled through the thick smoke, the ceiling groaning above us. Just as we cleared the threshold into the cool night air, the roof collapsed with a deafening crash. I stood in the shadows of the alleyway, gasping for breath, the 3 pups shivering against me. But the relief didn't last long. Well, look at the little hero." I froze. That voice, it was smooth, arrogant, and held no love. I turned slowly. Julian was standing there, his bow slung over his shoulder, a bloody sword in his hand. 2 other Silver River warriors stood behind him. He looked at me, then at the moon shadow pups I was protecting. "You're alive, Elara," Julian said, though he didn't sound happy. "I told the Alpha you'd probably be dead by the time we arrived. You were always a bit of a nuisance." "You used me," I whispered, the betrayal cutting deeper than any blade. "You sent me into the woods knowing Jax would hunt me. You knew Kael would find me. You knew he would bring me here." Julian laughed, a cold, sharp sound. "Our Alpha is a genius. He knew Kael had a weakness for innocence. We just didn't realize you were his mate. That was a lucky bonus. Imagine, the great Kael, brought down by a girl who can't even shift properly." He took a step toward me, his sword dripping. "Give me the pups, Elara. We need them as leverage to make the big wolf surrender." "No," I said, stepping in front of the children. My wolf, usually quiet and timid, began to growl. It was a low, vibrating sound that started in my chest. "Move, sister," Julian hissed, "or I'll tell father you died in the fire." "You'll have to kill me first," I snapped. Julian sneered and raised his sword. I closed my eyes, bracing for the strike, but it never came. A roar so powerful it felt like the earth was splitting open shook the alley. A blur of black fur slammed into Julian before he could swing. Kael had arrived. He wasn't a wolf anymore. He had shifted back to human form in his rage, his body covered in blood and soot. He stood over Julian, his hand wrapped around my brother's throat. Pinning him against the stone wall, Kael's eyes were no longer gold, they were pure, bottomless black. "You," Kael spat, his voice sounding like grinding metal. "You brought fire to my home, you tried to kill my mate." "Kael, wait," I cried out. Kael didn't listen. His muscles bunched, his fingers sinking into Julian's neck. Julian struggled, gasping for air, his face turning purple. "Kael, if you kill him, the war will never end." I ran to him, grabbing his arm. "Please, look at me." Kael turned his head. His black eyes landed on me, and for a second I saw the monster the stories warned about. He looked like he wanted to kill me too. But then he saw the 3 pups huddled behind me. He saw the soot on my face and the way I was shielding the children of his pack, the children my own brother had tried to burn. The black in his eyes flickered, the gold began to return. He looked at Julian, then back at me. With a growl of disgust, he slammed Julian's head against the stone, knocking him unconscious. He dropped my brother like a piece of trash. "Take the children to the Great Hall," Kael ordered me, his voice rough. "Now." "What about you?" I asked. He looked toward the gates where the fighting was still raging. "I have to end this." Before I could say another word, he shifted back into the black wolf and leaped onto the roof, disappearing into the smoke. I did as I was told. I led the pups through the chaos, dodging fighting wolves and falling embers, until we reached the safety of the stone keep. I pushed them inside and watched as their mothers ran to them, sobbing with relief. But I didn't get a warm welcome. The pack elder and Freya, her arm in a makeshift sling, were standing at the head of the hall. They saw me. They saw the blood on my clothes and the way I had come from the direction of the Silver River lines. "There she is," Freya screamed, her voice hysterical. "The spy." She opened the gates, she let them in. The surviving pack members in the hall turned. Their grief and fear quickly turned into a hungry rage. They began to circle me. I saved the pups," I shouted, but no one was listening. "She is a Silver River witch," the elder roared. "She has enchanted our alpha. Look at the fire, look at our dead, this is her doing." A woman whose husband had been carried in dead only minutes ago stepped forward and slapped me across the face. The force sent me spinning to the floor. "Kill her," someone shouted. "Hang the traitor." They lunged for me. I was buried under a wave of hands, being kicked and scratched. I felt a heavy boot hit my ribs and the world went grey. I waited for the end, wondering if Kael would even find enough of me to bury. Suddenly, the heavy doors of the Great Hall were kicked open. "Enough." The voice was a physical shockwave. The crowd scrambled back, leaving me bleeding and broken on the floor. Kael stood in the doorway. He was drenched in blood, none of it his own. In his left hand he held the severed banner of the Silver River Pack. In his right he held his heavy blade. The hall went silent. Kael walked through the crowd. Every person he passed bowed their head in terror. He reached me and knelt, his face a mask of cold, terrifying fury. He didn't pick me up gently this time. He stood up and turned to face his pack. "The Silver River Alpha is dead," Kael announced. "Their army is retreating into the woods. The war is over." A small cheer began to rise, but Kael cut it off with a snarl. "But my pack," Kael whispered, his voice carrying to every corner of the room. "My pack decided to spend their time attacking a girl who was saving their children from the fire." He looked at the elder, he looked at Freya. "I told you she was mine," Kael said, "and you touched her." He looked down at me, his eyes softening for only a fraction of a second before hardening into something unbreakable. "If any of you wish to live to see the sunrise," Kael said, "you will get on your knees, now." One by one the moon's shadow pack dropped. Freya was the last to go, her face pale with fear. Kael looked at me, then back at the kneeling crowd. "The war with Silver River is over," he repeated. "But the war for this pack has just begun, because tomorrow you will all watch as I mark her, you will watch as I make an enemy your queen." I looked up at him, my heart racing. He had saved me, but at what cost? He was forcing them to accept me, but I could see the resentment in their eyes. We weren't safe. We were just in the eye of the storm. Kael picked me up and carried me toward the stairs, but as we reached the top he stopped. He looked at the blood on my face and his grip tightened. "I killed your alpha, Elara," he whispered so only I could hear. "I killed your father." I froze in his arms. My father was dead, my brother was a traitor, and my mate was the man who had ended my bloodline. "Do you hate me?" Kael asked, his voice trembling for the first time. I looked into his golden eyes, seeing the monster and the savior all at once. I didn't know the answer. And as a final, distant howl echoed from the woods, a howl that didn't sound like a wolf but something much, much older, I realized that the Silver River Pack wasn't the only enemy we had to worry about. Something was coming for the mate bond, something that had been waiting in the shadows for centuries. Kael's words felt like a physical blow to my chest. My father was dead. The man who had raised me, the man who had led my people for 40 years, was gone. And he had died at the hands of the man who was now holding me, the man the stars said was my other half. I couldn't speak, I couldn't even cry. I just felt empty, like a hollow tree waiting for the wind to knock it over. Kael carried me into his room, his sanctuary, and kicked the broken door shut as best he could. He set me down on the bed, his hands lingering on my waist. "Elara," he said, his voice a low, pained rumble. I had no choice. He wouldn't stop. He was going to burn every pup in this keep. I looked at my hands. They were stained with the soot of the nursery and the blood of my kin. "He was my father, Kael," I whispered, "and you are my mate. How am I supposed to live with that?" Kael sank to his knees in front of me. The great Alpha, the man who had just conquered an army, was kneeling at the feet of a broken girl. He took my cold hands in his. "I don't know," he admitted. "I don't know how we fix this, but I know that if I hadn't killed him, I would have lost you. And I would rather have you hate me for 1,000 years than live one day in a world where you are dead." For a long time we just sat there in the silence of the room. The fire in the hearth had died down to glowing embers. Outside, the sounds of battle had turned into the sounds of mourning. The Moon Shadow Pack was cleaning up their dead. "That howl," I said suddenly, remembering the sound from the balcony. "That wasn't a Silver River wolf, what was it?" Kael's face went dark. He stood up and walked to the window, looking out into the pitch-black forest. "There are legends," he said. "Old stories from before the Great War, stories of the Shadow Walkers. They are wolves who gave up their humanity to the darkness. They don't have mates, they don't have packs, they only have hunger." He turned back to me, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. "The Shadow Walkers only appear when a royal bloodline is broken. By killing your father, I may have opened a door that cannot be closed." Before I could ask what he meant, a frantic knocking sounded at the door. It wasn't the elder or Freya. It was a young guard, his face white with terror. "Alpha, you need to come to the gates, now." Kael grabbed his sword. "Stay here, Elara, lock the door, do not open it for anyone but me." "Kael, wait," I jumped off the bed. "I'm coming with you." "No, it's too dangerous." "My father is dead, my brother is a prisoner, and my pack is gone," I said, my voice gaining a strength I didn't know I had. "I have nothing left to lose. If there is a monster at your gates, I want to see it." Kael stared at me for a moment, then nodded. He grabbed my hand, and together we ran through the keep. When we reached the gates, the scene was chilling. The Silver River warriors who had survived were not running away anymore. They were huddled in the clearing, their weapons dropped. They weren't looking at the Moon Shadow guards, they were looking at the trees. A mist was rolling in. It was thick, grey, and smelled like rotting leaves and old bone. And then they emerged. They looked like wolves, but they were wrong. Their limbs were too long, their fur was thin and patchy, and their eyes were not gold or yellow. They were empty white pits. There were hundreds of them, circling the clearing, moving in perfect, terrifying silence. One of them stepped forward. It was larger than the others. It shifted, its bones cracking and popping with a sickening sound. When it took human form, it wasn't a man. It was a creature of pale, translucent skin and long, black claws. "Alpha Kael," the creature hissed. The sound didn't come from its mouth, it echoed inside our heads. "You have spilled the blood of the ancient line. The balance is broken." Kael stepped in front of me, his wolf snarling beneath his skin. "What do you want, Shadow?" "The girl," the creature said, pointing a long, skeletal finger at me. "She is the last of the Silver River blood. Her life is the price for the balance. Give her to us and we will leave your pack in peace. Refuse, and we will eat every soul in this valley." A murmur went through the Moon Shadow Pack. I saw the Elder and Freya standing near the wall. They looked at me with hungry eyes. To them, this was the perfect solution. Give the enemy to the monsters and save the pack. Kael, the Elder, stepped forward. "The pack is already weak. We cannot fight these things. For the sake of your people, give them the girl. Kael didn't even look at him. He raised his sword, the silver blade gleaming in the moonlight. She is my mate, she is your queen, and you would sell her to the shadows. She is a Silver River stray, Freya shouted. She is the reason they are here, give her up. The Shadow Walker laughed, a sound like dry glass breaking. The pack has spoken, Alpha. Will you die for a girl who hates you? I felt the eyes of everyone on me. The Silver River survivors, the Moon Shadow Pack, and the monsters. I looked at Kael. He was one man against 100 shadows. If he fought for me, he would lose everything. His crown, his home, his life. I stepped out from behind him. Elara, no, Kael grabbed my arm. They want the blood of the Silver River, I said, looking the creature in the eyes. I felt a strange heat building in my chest. It wasn't the mate bond, it was something older, something from my father's line. I am Elara, daughter of the Silver King. My blood is not for you to take. Suddenly the ground beneath my feet began to tremble. A golden light, the same color as Kael's eyes, began to radiate from my skin. My wolf, the small, quiet thing I thought was weak, let out a howl that sounded like 1,000 voices. I didn't shift into a normal wolf. My body grew, my fur turning a brilliant, blinding white. I was a white wolf, the legendary protector of the royal line, a creature that hadn't been seen in 500 years. The Shadow Walkers recoiled, their white eyes hissing in the light. Kael gasped, his sword lowering, the White Queen. But the transformation was too much for my body. The power burned like fire in my veins. I let out one last, soul-shattering howl and collapsed, the white fur vanishing as I hit the ground in human form. The Shadow Walker leader screamed in rage, kill her now. The shadows lunged. Kael let out a roar of pure dominance. He shifted into his massive black form and met the shadows head-on. It was a dance of black and grey, of light and dark. He fought with a ferocity I had never seen, tearing through the monsters to get back to me. But there were too many. One of the Shadow Walkers slipped past Kael. It lunged at me, its black claws aimed at my throat. Elara, Kael screamed, shifting back to human form as he threw himself over my body. I felt the cold bite of the creature's claws, but the pain didn't come to me. I opened my eyes to see Kael slumped over me. 3 deep black gashes ran across his back. The Shadow Walker's venom was already turning his veins black. Kael coughed, blood staining his lips. He looked at me, his golden eyes fadding. Run, he whispered. Elara, run. The Shadow Walker leader stood over us, his pale hand reaching down to grab my hair. Behind him, the Elder and Freya were smiling. They had won. The Alpha was falling and the enemy was captured. But as the monster's hand touched my skin, something shifted. The ground didn't just shake, it opened. A voice, deeper than the shadows and older than the trees, boomed from the earth. Who dares touch the mate of the moon? The Shadow Walker froze, its face twisted in true primal fear. It looked up at the moon, which was turning a blood-red color. Everything went black. The world didn't just go dark, it went silent. It was the kind of silence that happens right before a huge storm hits. The blood-red moon hung in the sky like a giant, glowing eye. The Shadow Walkers, who were so brave a second ago, were now shaking. They dropped to their knees, their white eyes filled with a terror they couldn't hide. Kael lay heavy against me. His skin was turning a scary shade of grey, and the black veins were spreading up his neck toward his face. He was dying. My mate, the man who had burned down my world just to keep me in it, was slipping away. Kael, stay with me, I sobbed, pulling his head into my lap. You can't leave, you said I belong to you, you can't let go. His eyes fluttered open, they weren't gold anymore, they were dull. Elara, the white wolf, you are beautiful, he whispered. His hand reached up to touch my face, but it fell limp before he could reach me. No, I screamed. The Shadow Walker leader tried to crawl away, but the ground wouldn't let him. Thick, glowing roots shot out of the earth, wrapping around his ankles like snakes. The voice from the ground spoke again, and this time it sounded like 1,000 wolves howling at once. The balance was broken by greed, not by love, the voice boomed. I looked up and saw a figure standing in the center of the clearing. It wasn't a monster. It was a woman made of pure moonlight. Her hair flowed like a silver river, and her eyes were the color of the stars. It was the moon goddess herself. She looked at the Shadow Walkers with a face that was both sad and angry. You were meant to guard the dead, not hunt the living. With a wave of her hand, the monsters turned into ash. They didn't even have time to scream. They simply blew away in the wind like old campfire smoke. Then the goddess turned to the pack. She looked at the elder and Freya, who were trying to hide behind the stone walls. "You called for the shadows to kill your own kind," the goddess said. Her voice made the elder fall to the ground, clutching his ears. "You thought you could choose who the heart loves. You thought you were greater than the bond." "We did it for the pack," the elder cried out, his voice cracking. "She is the enemy." "She is the future," the goddess replied. She walked toward me and Kael. The grass grew green and tall wherever her feet touched the mud. She knelt beside us, and the air started to smell like lilies and fresh rain. She looked at Kael's black wounds and then looked at me. "He gave his life to save yours, little wolf," she said softly. "The shadow venom is strong, only the purest sacrifice can wash it away." "What do I have to do?" I asked. I didn't care about the war anymore, I didn't care about the crown. "Take my life, just let him live." The goddess smiled, and it was the most peaceful thing I had ever seen. "The white wolf does not give her life by dying, Elara. She gives her life by sharing it. You are the last of the Silver King. He is the first of the Shadow Throne. If you choose to join your souls, the war between your people will end forever, but you will feel his pain and he will feel yours until the end of time." "I already do," I said, looking down at Kael's pale face. "I've felt him since the moment he saved me from that rogue. Do it, please." The goddess placed her hand over mine and Kael's joined hands. A bright white light exploded from her touch. It felt like a million tiny needles were poking my skin, and then a sudden, sharp heat rushed through my heart. I saw Kael's memories. I saw the lonely boy who had to become a monster to protect his pack. I felt his fear that he would never be loved, and he saw me. He saw the girl who just wanted to belong. He felt my grief for my father and my anger at my brother. The black veins on his skin began to turn back to a healthy bronze. The grey vanished. Kael's chest suddenly rose with a deep, gasping breath. His eyes snapped open. They were gold again, but this time there were sparks of white in them, my white. "Elara," he choked out. He sat up, his strength returning in a rush. He looked at his hands, then at the goddess standing before us. The moon goddess began to fade into the light of the setting moon. "The bond is sealed," she whispered. "The two packs are now one. Protect each other, or the shadows will return." As she vanished, the sun began to peek over the mountains. The red moon was gone. The morning was quiet and golden. Kael stood up and helped me to my feet. He turned toward his pack and his own people. The Silver River warriors were standing near the gates, looking confused and tired. The Moon Shadow Pack was watching us with wide eyes. Kael looked at the elder. "You are stripped of your title," Kael said, his voice stronger than ever. "You will be banished to the borders. If you ever step foot in this kingdom again, I will not be the one to judge you. The goddess will." Freya began to cry, but Kael didn't even look at her. He turned to the Silver River warriors. "Your alpha is dead," Kael said. "Your homes are burned, but your queen is alive." He pointed to me. "I am the king of the Moon Shadow. She is the queen of the Silver River. From this day on, there is no more enemy. There is only the united pack." The Silver River warriors looked at me. They saw the white light still shimmering in my eyes. They saw the way Kael held my hand, not like a prisoner but like a partner. One by one, they dropped to their knees. Then the Moon Shadow Pack followed. Sealers, the guard from the gate, was the first, then the mothers of the children I had saved. Soon, the entire valley was filled with wolves bowing to their new leaders. Kael leaned down and whispered in my ear. "Are you ready, Elara? It won't be easy. They will still whisper. They will still remember the fire." I looked at the people, my people. I thought of the pups in the nursery and the future we could build together. I looked at the man who had been my nightmare and was now my everything. "Let them whisper," I said, a small smile finally reaching my lips. "We have a kingdom to build." Kael leaned in and kissed me, right there in front of everyone. It wasn't a kiss of war or a kiss of ownership. It was a promise that the girl who was hunted by a rogue and caught by an enemy had finally found her home. The war was over. The story of the enemy Alpha and the White Queen was just beginning. Thank you so much for following Elara and Kael's journey. From the dark forest to the throne, their love proved that even the strongest hate can't break a fated bond. If you loved this story, please comment, "Long live the Queen," and tell me your favorite moment. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss our next paranormal romance. We have so many more stories of alphas, mates, and magic waiting for you. See you in the next one.